Welcome everyone to our webinar on how to get more saves on Pinterest and Pinterest strategy. My name is Paola Mendez and I am the founder of the Blogger Union. For those of you who are not familiar with the Blogger Union, we are a network of blogger communities dedicated to growing our members' brands and incomes through meetups, workshops, and brand collaborations. If you would like to become a member, it's really easy. All you have to do is go to thebloggerunion.com, click register, and it's free. And you will receive email notifications for upcoming webinars, just like this one, local events, and brand partnerships. And my personal blog is Coral Gables Love, if you would like to check that out. Our speaker today is Alisa Meredith. She is the marketing manager at Tailwind, and she's here to share all of the Pinterest insights and answer all of your questions today. We are so excited to have you here today, Alisa. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing very well.
Wonderful. So before we get started, can you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, I can. So yes, as you mentioned, I am a marketing manager at Tailwind. I also have had my own marketing agency for many years. Got started in content marketing, did some social media, and then kind of brought it all together with inbound marketing, but then really got fascinated with Pinterest. I wanted to know, what is this thing? How can businesses use it? How far can we take it? Like, what can it do ultimately for a business? So I've explored that and seen what it can do. Just been a big fan of Pinterest marketing and feel like it doesn't get the attention that it deserves because it's smaller, because people think it's only for a very limited number of subjects. It's only for women, and on and on and on. A lot of reasons why people don't make use of it. So it's kind of been my thing to try to get people excited about Pinterest and to see the potential for their own business.
That's wonderful. So I think the best place to get started is to talk about, how is Pinterest different from other social networks?
Well, this is a complicated question because it is changing, but at its creation, Pinterest really was a visual search and discovery network, right? So most of the activity happening there is in search. People do scroll their home feed, but mainly they're searching. So success there has a lot to do with SEO, and their SEO engine is pretty cool. Like they can figure out what's in your image, and then they'll assign keywords on the back end according to what is in your image. They can read the text on your image. They scrape your site so they know if your pin matches the page it links to. It's pretty sophisticated, but getting it right is not. It's not that hard. So I think that makes it appealing to a lot more people. What is changing is that Pinterest now, and they said this in the fall, they really want to make Pinterest a place that connects pinners with creators. So whether you're a creator of a product, a service, or an idea, they really want to put content creators first. And that's when they introduced what they call idea pins, which is a multi-page pin that can have video and stills, a mixture of them. And it's meant to show the entire idea in a pin so that people don't have to go to your website. And in fact, they can't get to your website from an idea pin. And so that's kind of where they're moving, which is much more social. If you post an idea pin, you can get comments on it. People can upload photos if they've tried the thing too. You can get reactions on them. So it is becoming, or the intent of Pinterest is to make it more like social media.
Okay, wonderful. So that's really interesting that because yes, Pinterest, I see it more as a search engine than a social network, and those new idea pins seem to want to be competing with everyone's stories.
Yes, exactly. Yes, but of course they don't disappear though.
That's right. That's a good point.
Yeah, they stick around.
So maybe if we can get started, now that we know a little bit of how Pinterest works, what do you think, and that they are focused on creators like us, what would be a good strategy if you're a content creator that has a blog or a business to getting more traffic to your website from Pinterest and getting more saves? What is like just an overview of a strategy, and then we can get into the nitty gritty.
Okay, so it's two different things, right? Getting saves and getting traffic. You won't necessarily get traffic right from an idea pin. Now, what can happen and what some people have noticed happening is they get more traffic from Pinterest as a whole when they post more idea pins, because people are going to their profile and they're clicking on the link there. And you can actually see in your idea pin analytics, it will show you this many people went to your profile, this many people went to your profile and followed you, right? So you can actually see the potential there. But that's how you're going to get more saves. So we did a study in February. I'm going to pull this up so I get my numbers right.
Okay.
we did a study in February and March of this year, and we looked at over 20 million pins that were sent out via all methods. So it didn't matter if it was right on Pinterest, Pinterest scheduling, Tailwind scheduling, whatever. And this was only people who are paying for Tailwind, so just our members. So we wanted to know, like, what are people sharing and what is working. And what we found is that most people are sharing static images, right? Those are easy to make, generally speaking. And then so 95% of what's going out from Tailwind members is static images, 4% is video, and 1% are idea pins. So we wanted to know, all right, what's working best? It's not static images. So they do well, and that's where you get your clicks mostly. That's where your traffic is going to come from. You can also save them more than once, and you'll still get saves on that and clicks from that. However, video pins get 8 times more saves than a static image pin. And idea pins get 41 times more saves than a static image pin. So then, like, what do you do? I think you do it all, right? So you're creating this content. Maybe you're creating content for an idea pin. Can you also make a video version of it? Can you also make a static pin version of that idea pin, right? So that you're kind of covering all your bases, because search has not gone away. People still search on Pinterest, right? And they still click on pins. So I would say, don't take that 41x and 8x to mean that you should never make static image pins, because those are where your clicks come from.
So you don't see people clicking through video pins as much to websites?
You can, but it's a little tricky for people who aren't real familiar with Pinterest to even find the link, especially on mobile. So it's more likely that you're going to get your clicks from your static pins. Video's great too. And because you get 8 times more saves, it could equal the number of clicks eventually with all that downstream impact. But I would say, because I think when I present this information, sometimes people will think, okay, then I'm only doing idea pins, but that's not the takeaway, really. Kind of do it all, which I know people don't want to hear. But again, like, if you have a great idea, it's not going to be that hard to spin off from your idea pin a static image or two and a video pin as well.
Absolutely. So now that you mentioned that you can kind of repurpose your content to use it in all of the different features that Pinterest is offering now, there was an update recently where Pinterest did not want you to keep reposting the same content. They want you to publish fresh content, fresh pins. Mm-hmm. So if we reuse the same video for a video pin, and then we upload that same video to an idea pin, do you think Pinterest is going to say that's a no-no, or do you think that's a good idea?
So I wouldn't do the identical thing, right? So if you're making an idea pin, it's generally going to have multiple pages to it. So you might have 4 or 5 videos, a couple of static images in there, and then I would pull out your videos. If they make sense on their own, maybe you have to annotate them differently or something. Make sure they're all useful on their own, or you just make another video that's just a video, like one page version of what you put in the idea pin. So for instance, if you're talking about how to make a Blue's Clues cake for your kid, right? And so you have your idea pin that has like the finished product and how, like all the ingredients and how to do the decorations. And it's all included in that idea pin. You even have a list where you can put in all the ingredients, right? So there's no need for them to click to go to your website. It's all in the idea pin. That's how Pinterest wants it. We want people to click to our site, which is, kind of a different goal. But to go with that idea pin, you could do a video pin that just shows a part of that process, right? Or maybe you make a video pin and then you chop it up and add annotations to it for your idea pin. So I wouldn't do like one for one exactly the same video in two different formats. I would do a different version of it. And then of course for your static pin, you could have like the finished result with a caption on it, like what it is.
Okay, perfect. So I really like that for as a strategy, try to use all the features. So now let's get more into specifics.
Okay.
When we're talking about a static pin, what are the different things you should include in your pin that cause people to save your pin?
Okay. So one of the things is you always want branding on it, and that's not always just for click. It's also for brand awareness, and it increases conversion. So if you think about your brand will give your pin a little bit of context. So let's think about this example of a video pin someone sent me, and they were like, "This is my client's pin, and they can't figure out why they're not getting any sales off of it, even though it gets saved a million times." So I looked at it, and it was a video of somebody doing a wood burning on like a turntable, and it was really pretty. It was beautiful. But there was zero context. Like there was no branding, there was no caption. Even the title and description was like monogrammed turntable. It didn't tell you that in fact you could actually go and buy that thing. Right? So people were saving it because it was cool, or maybe they thought they'd learn how to do it, but it wasn't serving the purpose of the pinner who wanted sales from it. Like your logo on there as a business tells people this is a business, right? And when I click on this pin, I should expect to be taken to a business site where someone wants me to do something. And that's what we want as bloggers, right? We want people to come to our site and to join our email list and to become a customer. And it can really help a lot to have that branding on there.
Absolutely. I also love how you mentioned how the branding helps kind of give context, because people were saving the pin for many different reasons. And I think when you are creating maybe the text that you want to put over your pins, you should keep in mind what the landing page where you're going to is your blog is about, and the audience of Pinterest, what their intention is when they are see your pin, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about like how we can create pins so that we attract Pinterest users who are trying to find our content specifically, and that's why they'll become customers?
Yeah. So I'll give you another kind of fail example, and this one's from Tailwind's account actually. Is unintentional fail, where we had this blog post about Instagram 9 grids, right? And so there are some images in there, some screenshots of some really pretty 9 grids on Instagram, look beautiful. People pin those like crazy, right? But they're only doing it because it looks pretty. They have no interest in the blog post because there's no text on it, no nothing that would indicate where they're going to go when they click. So yeah, just make sure you're giving that context is super important. And what was the rest of your question? Remember?
Well, that Pinterest users, like when they use Google, right? They have an intention when they're doing their searches, right? So, like, for example,
right,
your pin could just be a beautiful picture at the beach, right? But maybe, but your blog post might be about what to pack when you're traveling to Miami. So you want to help them understand what your content is at the end of the road, so that they'll save and go through.
Yes. So your caption on your image is super important, especially as bloggers. So, if you're a photographer or you're maybe in home decor or food, sometimes you can get away with just a picture of the thing, right? You can get a picture of the couch is kind of all people need, or a picture of these cookies, maybe. But for bloggers in general, we really need to give context, because if I'm writing a post about how to have a productive morning, how am I going to picture that, right? Maybe like a someone waking up and stretching, but if I add no context to that, um, are people going to click? So add the text right on your image, and as well pay close attention to your pin title, because what people see first in the feed is the text on your image, and as bloggers, super important. What they see next, right underneath it in bold type, is your pin title, which should not be the same as the text on your image. Because here's like another little piece of real estate you're getting on Pinterest. You don't want to just use the same words again. It's kind of a waste of space. So you use that to give people a reason to click, but don't use click here, right? Because if we had a whole stream of pins with click here underneath, that would be a terrible experience. But yeah, just give people, like, maybe your text says grow your social, because I'm looking at Pinterest right now, and your title of your pin is try Hootsuite free for 30 days. Like, great, right? That's two different context for your pin, two different reasons to click on your pin and then act.
Absolutely. So we're not starting to talk about like the anatomy of a pin. So we have the photo, we have the text overlay that you put on your pin. You talked about the caption, and we have the description. We used to have hashtags also. Is that still a thing on Pinterest?
No, no, they've gone back and forth several times about it, but right now, no, they're not functioning and they're not recommended. You just need 1 to 2 keyword rich sentences in your description. And keyword is something we haven't really talked much about, but it is very important on Pinterest because of that search element. So you might have a list of keywords that you use for Google, and that's a really good place to start, but they're not likely to be the same as your keywords that you want to use on Pinterest. And part of the reason for that is that 97% of searches on Pinterest are not branded. So people are not looking for your brand, generally speaking, which is good. It's good for anyone who hasn't spent thousands and thousands of dollars on brand awareness, that we have that chance to be found. So what you want to do is take your Google keywords and then bring them over to Pinterest, drop them in the search bar, and see what comes up. So let's see, what might I be using for a base keyword? Can you give me an example?
Oh, sure. Uh, what to wear to a wedding?
Okay, I'm going to type in wedding, wedding dresses, wedding ideas, wedding hairstyle. I'm going to do wedding guest. Here we go. Wedding guest dress, wedding guest outfit, hairstyles, book ideas, dress summer, style summer. So any of those would be good keywords for you to go after. It's just like Google's drop down, right? Showing you what people actually search that's related to that keyword. So some of these are products, some of these are articles, etc. But yeah, start with those keywords. You can also get a lot of related keywords by pretending that you're going to run an ad. So if you go to ads and then create an ad, kind of go through those first few steps, enter whatever you want because you're not actually going to run it. When you get to targeting, there's a section for keywords and interests. You can put in your original keyword, like wedding guest, dress even, and it will give you a whole bunch of keywords to choose from that you can then use for all kinds of things, like the text on your image, like your title, like your description, like the board it's going to be saved to on your Pinterest account. And that's how you kind of get your keywords everywhere. Pinterest uses a lot of things to determine how to show your pin. Like we mentioned, the item in your blog post or on your pin, but do all you can with your keywords. if you search for a keyword, you're going to see things that don't match that keyword. That's because of the discovery part, right? So Pinterest knows us really well. Or thinks they do, but actually I think they do know us really well. So they think, okay, someone who's searching for wedding guest dress is probably also going to be interested in things like wedding gifts, right? Or destination wedding tips. Like all those things around that topic are things that you're going to see in that search, which is pretty cool.
That is great. And actually, all of those suggestions are great blog post topic ideas as well. So that's great to do that
Absolutely.
research. And
Yes. Yeah.
we have a question from the audience, and they just want to clarify what you mean keyword rich. Does that mean adding all of these different keywords throughout the different opportunities you have to add text in your pin?
Yes. And it doesn't mean to just stuff your description field with keyword after keyword, right? So speak naturally or write naturally the way that you speak and include those keywords, but don't try to keyword stuff because it doesn't work.
Right. Okay, perfect. So we're also talking about a little bit about SEO. Can you tell us how we can use SEO in our profile so that our profile shows up when people are searching for topics?
Well, thinking about the fact that searches are typically unbranded on Pinterest, think about where you want to use your brand. So is it that important to you that it becomes your only handle, or do you want to have also in your name like Paola Mendez, blogging expert, right? That way you get some keywords in there and people know who you are. But I would also say that it's not a real common thing that people do, like looking for pinners in particular. Most of the time people are just looking for the content, so they'll do a search. So your profile, while it can give some good hints about your SEO, is not super important. Like you don't have to worry about your order of your boards. You don't have to worry about board covers because typically people, unless they're coming from an idea pin, right, they're not looking at your profile. So think about if they're coming from idea pins, what can you tell them in your description, right? Because they've consumed your content. It was all on Pinterest. There's no link there. So what do you want to tell those people to do? Because I have a feeling that if it's not already the case, that soon as people are using idea pins, that will be where most people come from to find your profile. Because that's the CTA at the very end of an idea pin. So what is it in your description that you want to tell those particular people? Like how can they find your content online if they can't link to it from an idea pin? Yeah, let them know.
Okay, perfect. So we talked about things that we should do. Are there some things that we shouldn't do, things we should avoid doing on Pinterest that might cause us to be seen as spammers or other things?
Yeah. So one of my favorites is when people say, I made 50 pins for my blog post, and now when I search for it, all the results are mine. That's so awesome. It is not awesome. It's not a good experience for the user. So think about what your needs are, what Pinterest wants, and what the users want. And it's that convergence of the three that works. So if there's anything you're doing that feels hacky, or has a little nagging thought in your head, maybe this is spammy, it probably is. So like doing that, like trying to dominate the search results, it's not a good thing. You're going to get reported for spam. You can lose your account. Yeah, it's bad. So just try to serve the interest of pinners. You know when you're not. I mean, we all have that conscience, right? We know when we're doing it for ourselves and trying to hack the system. So just don't do that. And don't rely on existing content to just keep resharing and resharing and resharing indefinitely to get you the results you want.
Oh.
So you've got to be creating that new, fresh content. And that could mean new content in your website. It could mean new content to show your ideas on the platform. But the days of being able to share the same pin every day and have it work, those are long gone. Yeah, it doesn't work.
Okay, so we're getting to how many times should we pin a day or a week?
Yeah, it depends on how much content you have. So if you are a blogger and you have 500 blog posts that have never been added to Pinterest, I'm really jealous of you. um, but that person would be able then to pin much more often per day, right? To get all that content out there. I would not do it all at once, that's for sure, but I would drip it out slowly. The person who has everything on Pinterest and blogs once a week, that number is going to be a lot lower, right? Because you don't want to just keep repeating the same thing, especially if it's not getting traction. So there's no number. I know people want a number. Uh, I know that if you want to join the creator community, you have to make at least one idea pin per month. So there are very few numbers like that. I think that's the only one I can really think of. Pin regularly, like try to keep the same cadence. So if you're thinking, all right, I'm going to commit to pinning once a day, like do that rather than pinning 50 times and then not doing it for a month. And that's kind of where a scheduler like Tailwind comes in very handy. So you can kind of batch your work, right? And then you schedule it out and then don't really have to think about it except to come in and see, okay, what's working and how can I adjust what I'm doing to get more of what is working.
I see. Now that we're talking about that scheduler, um, is it still beneficial to repost older pins to new boards? You know, something you
Yeah.
haven't pinned in like 6 months. Is that still a good idea?
Yeah. So what we found, we looked at the impact of resharing content and we looked at static pins, video pins, and idea pins. And we found that, yeah, there is some benefit to resharing a static pin. Like you said, it'll spread it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be 6 months. It could be a lot closer than that. We actually found that the half-life of a pin, right? Or so like the peak of your engagement is about 2 months after you pin, which means, if you want to keep that piece of content alive, you might want to share something about it every couple of months. And that's totally aggregate, right? It's not like I still see pins come up that I pinned years ago. Like it doesn't mean that they're at 2 months, like that's half of your stuff and that's it, right? It just means at average, that's when it starts to taper off. But rather than just sharing the same pin, like you can do that a little bit. We have this thing called Tailwind Create, where you drop in your URL and we'll pull out the images from your post, we'll pull out the title, and then we'll generate thousands of ideas for you for Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook. So when we did a study of just the Pinterest image generation, it took people less than 2 minutes to make a new pin. So if you can do that instead, that's great, because we found when people did that, right, specifically made a new pin with Tailwind Create and shared that out, they got 373% more saves than when they just recycled a pin they already had, right? So there's still some benefit to resharing. There's also some benefit to resharing videos at this time. There is almost zero benefit to resharing an idea pin.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So, and that makes sense too, right? Like how many versions of that pin do you need on your home feed, right? We're under the creator tab. Like you probably don't want more than one there. And the idea of it is not so that you save my pin and then other people see your version of it. No, the idea is that I share that pin I created and other people see my version of it. So it just makes sense. But yeah, those idea pins are a whole new animal and it's a whole different world on Pinterest now.
Absolutely. And Tracy's asking, I was wondering, how often should we publish idea pins?
Well, like I said, if you want to be in the creator community, which I suggest you join because it's really helpful, you get access to people at Pinterest and ideas about what is working like right then. You need to create one at least once a month, which it's not a lot, but depending on your work stream and how you create your content, they can be a little bit time consuming. The creator on desktop is difficult. So it really requires you to create all of your pages separately and then just upload them. If you do it on mobile though, it's a lot better. So I've created two different kinds. I made some for a couple for Tailwind, and those were intense. I mean, took me literally 5 hours because I wanted to make a video for each one. Then I had to add the captions, and I had to do it all in another program and then bring it in. It was tricky, especially when trying to add video or audio to it because you can't sync it. It's tricky. But I also made one for myself for my business account with the painting that I do. So I do acrylic painting, and I often will record it anyway because I like to share it on Instagram or maybe TikTok. So I'm already recording it. And then after I'm done, I'm going to take a slow pan with a video. I'm going to take some pictures in different lighting. And then I can just very easily add the supplies and whatever you need. That takes 10 minutes. So if you want to do idea pins, think about your process. As a blogger, you're probably going to have to do a little bit of storyboarding. You could go by the headings in your blog post, but what you're going to really try to do is recreate the whole blog post as an idea pin.
Oh.
It's kind of a lot of work, but I definitely think it's worth a try.
Okay, wonderful. That's a really good idea to use the structure of your blog post to create the idea pin. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I think this is my last question, and then we can
Okay.
jump into the questions from our audience. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat and we will take your questions. But my last question is about other people's content. So how important is it now, after all of these changes, pinning other content that's not your own content?
It's not. You don't have to do it. Yeah, you could pin just your own content all the time and it would be fine. However, most people want to share content. That's what real users do on the platform, right? We find stuff that we like. We want to collect it to save it for later. Maybe we want to read it later. We want to do it later. We want to buy it later. That is natural activity. So if you want to save somebody else's content, go right ahead, right? But don't be thinking that it's going to build up your content success somehow. You really need to focus on your own content.
Okay, wonderful. That is absolutely new.
It is kind of new. I think the other thing to keep in mind is, like, your content spreads and gets distribution based on the action of your followers. So if you're putting content out and nobody's reacting to it, nobody's saving it, it's kind of dead in the water. So I think if we were all, like, every pinner in the world was to take that attitude, right? No pins would ever go anywhere. But because the natural behavior of a pinner is to collect things on Pinterest, it's perfectly fine, as long as you're not saving 5,000 pins a day.
Right. Okay, wonderful. So we don't have, let me scroll up. I believe we addressed their questions as we were going.
Okay.
So let me just double check. Oh, yeah, we have Abby is asking, what kind of other tools can you use to find keywords?
So I would suggest, like, starting with your Google keywords, using the drop down in Pinterest. Also, the ad hack that we talked about. So going in there and getting more related keywords. The other thing I would really highly recommend you get, you fall in love with, as I did, is trends on Pinterest. So trends.pinterest.com. You can put in your keyword. Well, first of all, it will show you the top Pinterest trends for the week, and then it will show you trending ideas for the top categories like fashion, food and drink, beauty, home decor, travel. So you can find keywords in there, right? Because it'll give you the topics. If you don't see what works for you, you can type in a keyword and you'll be able to see. So what we did before was wedding guest. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So what I'm seeing, it's going to give you a trend for the year. Like, at what point is the interest right now? So on a scale of 0 to 100, where are we in that yearly trend line? And I can see wedding guest dress was a tiny bit higher last week, but other than that, we're at the peak for the whole year. So you should be pinning about that. The same thing with wedding guest outfit, wedding guest hairstyle. And of course, a lot of these are going to be skewed because of what happened in 2020 with coronavirus. Like there are some weird trends and things that usually trend that didn't trend. So it's going to make our numbers a little bit funny, but it's still really helpful to kind of plan what should I be writing about now? What should I be writing about in a month, etc.
Oh, that's great to check out those trends. But if we keep in mind that the peak of our pins happen 2 months out, so for example, we want to pin about stuff for the holidays, should we pin 2 months before the holidays or should we pin during the holidays?
Both, right? So the reason we say pin 2 months out is right, that's when people start looking, but people will look for that right up until the day of. So I run the Pinterest ads for Tailwind, and so I talk to our ad rep every week, and I wanted to start a new campaign. She's like, wait till December 26th, because that's when all the big advertisers stop their ads. And I was like, are you serious? Like they'll even run their ads on the day of? She's like, oh yeah, they will. So run it right up until the day of, because you will still get that activity.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that was such great insight. And so someone is asking, I create YouTube videos. What part of the videos do you recommend pinning? So far, I've only pinned animated thumbnails.
Yeah. So one thing that Pinterest did bring out in March was, hey, we don't want you to just share exactly what you made for Instagram, or, well, they said for other platforms, but they're probably talking about TikTok, because if you go on Pinterest and you search, TikTok videos are everywhere. They're super popular. So I would repurpose that a little bit. I would pull out clips, right? So if you have a clip where you're answering a question or you're explaining like real succinctly what you do, I would pull that out and upload it as a video. Not sharing the YouTube video, because those don't do real well. But before, when that was our only option, yeah, creating that thumbnail that then would lead to YouTube was a great option. Now we can pin the whole thing right on Pinterest, which is going to do better.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. So that was our last question. Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All of your insights. This webinar replay will be shared on YouTube, so make sure that you check out our YouTube channel and you subscribe so that you get notifications for upcoming webinar replays. Upcoming later this week, we have how to get started with TikTok. It'll be this Thursday. So if you go to the bloggerunion.eventbrite.com, you can register for that webinar, and I will see you Thursday. And thank you everyone for being such an engaged audience and asking questions in the chat. Yes, it was lovely hanging out with all of you guys. So I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll see you Thursday. Bye everyone.